Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Sonic the Hedgehog here.
And I'm Amy Rose here, and we are back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos.
And right off the bat though, there's no music in the background, so that's a great start, doesn't it?
Yeah, I always thought about that.
So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Sonic Boom, Rise of Lyric. In some cases I hate this game so much, for the Nintendo Wii U, and only for the Wii U. So, last time, we essentially did manage to claim ourselves the next Chaos Crystal somewhere in a pit, which not only we did somehow manage to take down one boss, but two bosses on that particular the pit level. So because of that though,
yeah, because the majority of the level itself is about the fact that we're going to be forced to play as not only with Sonic, but as well as with Knuckles the whole way through.
Yeah, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that when it comes to both Amy and Tails, they somehow managed able to actually just to experience the entire level off-screen for a while. So, but I digress. And also we did somehow manage able to accidentally run into our first major glitch in the game. So as a result, nothing too surprising about that. And in addition to that, we also did manage able to, well, do some final bits for the sake of the forms of the first hub world in the game, and as a result, after that though, we did somehow manage able to transport ourselves into Bygone Island, which appears to be the second hub world in the game, and relatively speaking though is about the fact that, like I said this before, this is what the true problems truly began, in regards to the forms of the entire progression for the sake of this whole entire game. So, anyways, today for this video, speaking of which, is about the fact that we're about to start to explore some sections in Bygone Island, and as a result, I think, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that we can start to explore into the next level, which appears to be Crate Lake. So because of that though, because something tells me it's about the fact that there's going to be yet another Chaos Crystal around here somewhere.
Yeah, I was thought about that, especially concerning for the fact that according to the forms of the actual hint, that obviously that was about the fact that we can expect to actually walk around for a bit, and what I can tell is about the fact that when it comes to the forms of Bygone Island, it's also rather barren, just like the forms of how it does it for the sake of the forms of the first hub world. And relatively speaking though, as far as what Sonic did somehow want to point things out, there's going to be a lot of technical issues for the sake of the forms of this hub world in general.
Yes, exactly. This could be ranging from the sake of the forms of not only for the sake of the forms of stuttering, if you couldn't tell, but it's also about the fact that, do you guys even remember during the forms of specifically, the Nintendo Switch version of Sonic Frontiers, that basically though about the fact that is about the fact that there's one common problem on the Switch version of Sonic Frontiers, which appears to be pop-ups? Well, apparently though, in the forms of this whole entire game, as well as this entire hub world in some cases though, there's going to be a lot of pop-ups around here. So because of that though, that makes things a lot more distraction as far as this is concerning. So relatively speaking though, that's as far as I can try to explain about the forms of how the fact that how much I really despise the forms of Bygone Island, by the way. Not only because it's rather boring, but it's also about the fact that, well, as I said before, there's a lot of technical problems, especially noticeable if you go towards the forms of the next part of the town. Basically though, it stutters a lot, like as you can see right there, probably because it does take a bit of some time to load things up, and generally speaking though, it is so unpleasant to actually see a lot of stuttering involves. So because of that though, gee, no wonder why about the fact that this game only receives one patch update, and as a result, after that though, well, let's just say the developers of this game just simply gives up on giving us some more patches. Like, as a result, we did not receive a patch update for patch update number 2, or 3, or 4. Whilst unlike the forms of how it does it in Sonic Colors Ultimate, at the very least that game does have patch updates to actually fix up the game's technical issues, including with the forms of in-game bugs or even seizure-reducing moments. And well, despite the fact that Sonic Colors Ultimate still has its issues, specifically when it comes to the forms of some graphical limitations, or perhaps even maybe about the fact that when it comes to menu UI, still feels a bit laggy every time whenever you navigate through the option satellite mode, and generally speaking, I was about the fact that I really do wish they were able to fix that, but it's already too late now, because obviously that was about the fact that, well, obviously we are still looking forward to actually experiencing Sonic Cross Shadow Generations coming up soon, until specifically about 4 months time now, so as a result, we are still basically excited for it, so...
Yeah, I can agree, especially concerning for the fact that so far anyway, that when it comes to looking upon the forms of the gameplay footage for that particular demo, by the way, it looks absolutely amazing.
And thankfully though, unlike the ones how it does it in both Sonic Forces, including with the forms of certain cyberspace levels in Sonic Frontiers, thankfully though, the Shadow Generations levels lasted for about slightly longer time. So because of that though, yeah, that's more like it. Especially unlike in Sonic Forces though, every single level's usually lasted for about a minute or two. So generally speaking though, I fully appreciate about the fact that the level length is going to get a lot more normal compared to the forms of how it does it in, well, as I said before, since in Journey forms of about a couple of seconds ago. So, but anyway, so yeah, I was originally trying to increase our rings capacity, but unfortunately though, we still come across as that stupid connection problem. So,
you give me shinies, I give you princess crowns, okay?
well, here's Styx the Badger right here, and suffice to say, sadly, she's not playable in this game, because she's actually the NPC, so because of that though, this is what the shinies comes into play, by the way, that in order to actually receive some more crowns, is that every time whenever you do manage to see the actual footprints, and then if you're trying to actually scan in the actual specific portions, like if you're trying to actually tap that particular icon into your Wii U gamepad, and basically though you can to actually perform a stomp ability, and as a result you can actually just try to obtain one of the shinies. So, and if you collect some more shinies, you obviously give some shinies to Styx, and as a result that Styx will give you some more crowns. So potentially those about the fact that not only that basically those about the fact that in order to actually upgrade your specific parts and stuff like that, not only do you have to obtain certain amounts of those robot scrap metals, but it's also about the fact that when it comes to obtaining certain crowns as well. So let's just say this right now, I don't think it's possible we can to actually level up ourselves when it comes to the forms of those specific skills and all that stuff, and I don't think it's possible for us though to actually obtain every single power glyphs basically, because I don't feel that much of a difference when it comes to try to equipping the actual specific power glyphs depending on what specific power glyphs we somehow obtained. So, but that's besides the point. So, anyway, let's talk about the forms of the continued discussion for the sake of the forms of Sonic Cross Shadow Generations. Seriously, I can to actually talk about that game every single day as far as the actual new things has been addressed. The first thing we want to point out is that, unfortunately though, for those of you who really want to to experience the game early on the Switch version, well, I did found out about the forms of, when it comes to the forms of the Digital Deluxe Edition, that basically it did says on the actual tiny writing on the bottom left corner, after that particular Digital Deluxe Edition has been addressed, it did say that early release not available on the Nintendo Switch version. So, I guess no matter what though, that players has to wait specifically until when the game actually comes out, during at some point on the 25th of October. Speaking of the 25th of October actually, well, actually as it turns out is about the fact that one of those games in particular, called Call of Duty Black Ops 6, well, apparently though, not only is going to be once again going to be releasing on multitude of platforms, just like the forms of how it does it in the previous Call of Duty games basically, since Modern Warfare 3, the 2023 version. So basically though, it's about the fact that apparently though, the release date is going to be confirmed for Call of Duty Black Ops 6. It's going to be releasing on exactly the same day as in Sonic Cross Shadow Generations, and I was like, okay, I was not expecting that, especially concerning for the fact that I was assuming it's going to be releasing during at some point in November time, just like the forms of how it does it on the previous Call of Duty games, but apparently though, they just cut straight to the point, to try to release the game a lot earlier than I was expecting. So because of that though, yeah, personally though, I'm also able to try to go after, you know, Sonic Cross Shadow Generations, because obviously though, I'm super excited to know what certain levels they'll bring. for Shadow Generations. I already know for a fact that, well, there's only 4 levels has been confirmed so far, so we want to know about more about it during at some point in the next couple of months. So, but then again, we'll have to wait and see what happens. So, anyway, and there's also another thing that's worth noting for, actually. Recently, during the informs of about a couple of days ago, since on the 9th of June, actually, it looks like about the fact that recently, Disney has been, suggest about the fact that they somehow managed able to celebrate one of those Disney characters, and as a result that one of those characters in particular has recently celebrated its 90th anniversary in this year, and that character in questioning will have to be by the forms of Donald Duck. Yes, Donald Duck has now officially became 90 years old since in 1934. So as a result, no matter what though, is that apparently though, that when it comes to the forms of the Disney Plus, as far as the forms of new additional content they'll bring, well, they did somehow manage able to release one of those specific shorts based off for the sake of the forms of the 90th anniversary of Donald Duck himself, and that particular short is actually going to cause it, let's just say, Donald Duck in DIY Duck. So, because of that though, recently that particular short has came out on Disney Plus recently, so no matter what though, I'm curious to check it out. Well, mind you, about the fact that I haven't exactly watched too much of Mickey Mouse short cartoons ever since in Journey Forms have been, well, let's just say me and Shadow did somehow manage able to watch one of those specific Mickey shorts cartoons back in the day, thanks to the forms of one of those DVDs we did somehow have back then, which appears to be Disney's Winter Wonderland, which did came out in 2003, by the way, not only for on VHS, but also on DVD as well. And generally speaking, I was about the fact that by the end of that particular DVD itself, not only does it contain one of those cartoon shorts, which appears to be based off for the sake of the forms of, I don't know, like grasshoppers or something like that, but it's also one of those Mickey Mouse cartoons they did somehow contain with, featuring the forms of, let's just say, Pluto, to able to actually become extremely jealous about the forms of that kitty cat that somehow has been rescued somehow. That's as far as I can remember correctly. So, but either way, though, that's as far as I can try to think about it. So, anyways, though, there's also another thing we wanted to point out as well, is that not only about the fact that, obviously, like we said this before, recently about the fact that not only does Joy and Sadness has recently been joined on Disney's Speed Storm game, but it's also same applies with the forms of Anger and Fear, whilst meanwhile for Disgust will be at some point, I think she did somehow manage to join in eventually, at least if I recall correctly anyway. Well, mind you, it has been about quite a few days ago since we've last discussed upon the forms of Disney Speed Storm, since, I would say, since on Saturday, basically, because as a result, yeah, despite the fact, no matter what though, is about the fact that maybe at some point that we will discuss upon the forms of something entirely new just came up with, during at some point in the next couple of days or so, we'll remind you about the fact that during at some point by the end of this week in particular, well, let's just say, at this point right about now, that once we get to the point until specifically on Friday or something like that, or Thursday, depending on the forms of what's going to be happening, well, basically those about the fact that we must also take ourselves a massive break when it comes to uploading schedules for now, because obviously those about the fact that we've got a lot of things to take care of. So, anyway, so now we're able to actually access to the next level, which appears to be known as Crater Lake. So because of that though, once again we have to able to go into the speed section right here, and no matter what though, is about the fact that we did somehow miss the crown from the start. So, because obviously though, the frame rate really does not help at all, and it's especially noticeable concerning for the fact that, well, obviously we can't able to actually just trying to once again trying to dodge a lot of things, you know? And also, something's worth noting for, at least where I recall correctly, despite the fact that that particular original playthrough of this game is no longer there anymore, basically what happens was though is about the fact that when Daffy Duck did somehow manage able to experience this stage for the first time, and as a result, after wandering around for a bit on that particular mini-hub world of any sorts, well, basically though, he accidentally come across into that particular major glitch, where basically though is about the fact that if you dare manage to try to able to actually use Tails at one point in one of those spots in the actual mini-hub world, basically what happens was, though, you simply just go all the way back to the speed section all over again, and you have to make sure you have to make your way back again. So because of that, though, yeah, I can totally see why that this game sucks, especially considering for the fact that whilst unlike in Sonic 06, that, like I said before, some glitches is like so bad it's funny kind of territory, whilst in here, though, it's nothing too funny about, especially considering for the fact that, well, at the very least, that in Journey forms within Sonic Free Riders, it's not very glitchy, well, apart from control issues, because obviously, though, it requires an Xbox 360 Connect in order able to actually play the game completely, but you get the idea for this point. Yeah, I will personally not recommend able to actually go through the entire playthrough of Sonic Free Riders, because obviously, though, I've heard so many bad things about it, especially because about the fact that, at the very least, though, about the fact that every nowadays, certain players now able to actually access the game by able to actually utilize with the actual controller patch. So, yeah, that's as far as I can try to able to think about that, Amy. So, anyway, so we've now made our way to the forms of Crater Lake right now. So, mind you about the fact I do apologize if my commentary gets a little bit slightly messy at some point. Because let's face it, though, that's as far as we can able to explain about the forms of the majority of the stuff, as far as for right now anyway. Although, there's actually another thing I want to point out in regards to the forms of some of these another set of changes that I somehow forgot to mention about, since in Journey forms of on Monday, potentially. Well, basically, though, they somehow managed able to add it in 2 new information, thanks to the forms of, you know, Sonic Wikipedia and stuff like that, where basically, though, is about the fact that there was actually 2 more changes from the likes of the comparison with the original version of Sonic Generations. Like, for instance, is about the fact that they somehow addressed that the player is now able to get an S rank with a clear time fast enough, whereas in the original game, the S rank can only be achieved without losing a single life in exchange for perfect bonus, and a bonus that increased the rank by 1 rank in the original game is likely removed in this remaster or this remake or whatever. So, what the hell was that shadow right there?
What's the matter, Sonic? Is there something wrong? Oh, goodness gracious, what in the world is going on with this particular drop shadow?
Yeah, you see what I mean, Amy, right there? Basically, though, why does it goes into the 5 frames per second right there? That's just wrong. But, anyway, enough about that. So, yeah, because apparently, though, is about the fact that it looks like getting the S rank requirements is actually going to get a lot different this time around, compared to the forms of how it does it in the original version of the game, that's for sure. So, yeah, wish me luck, I suppose, in regards to the forms of trying to go for a fully 100% completion of Sonic Cross Shadow Generations coming up at some point in October, but relatively speaking, I was just about the fact that, well, you get the idea for that point. And on top of all that stuff, though, is about the fact I also noticed something, is that the maximum ring score available is drastically decreased from 5,000 points to 1,000 points this time around. So, yeah, that's a little bit of a unexpected change right here. And also, for what I've noticed something is about the fact that there's also another thing I want to point out. Whenever I looked upon the forms of the gameplay footage of the actual demo of specifically Shadow Generations, is that I've noticed that the overall control scheme for Shadow Generations is most likely going to be based off from the forms of Sonic Frontiers rather than Sonic Generations. So I'm also able to try to get used to it once the actual game comes out. So at the very least, I know exactly what to do after playing through so many hours of Sonic Frontiers, not only on the Switch version, but as well as on the PlayStation 4 version, and heck, even especially noticeable with the Xbox One version, so I'm pretty much all set to go. And, regardless of anything else, though, is about the fact that when it comes to likely increasing the boost, which is actually mapped out by the forms of the right bumper, and the button separates from the jump button be used for the homing attack. So as a result, it's going to be very similar to Sonic Frontiers, that's for sure. And in addition to the boost gauge, Shadow actually has a gauge that fills the Chaos powers. So it's very similar to the forms of how it does it in Shadow the Hedgehog in that respect. Except the fact that obviously that is about the fact that Shadow can able to actually perform, let's just say, two abilities, as far as I can recall correctly. Like, one of them is actually Chaos Control, which allows you to able to slow down time, similar to the forms of how it does it in Shadow the Hedgehog in the actual boss fights, rather than on the actual levels, because in the actual levels in Shadow the Hedgehog, you can just simply just able to actually get a massive burst of speed, while trying to able to actually perform a Chaos Control. And there's also the forms of Chaos Snap, where basically that allows you to able to attack stuff, including certain enemies. Speaking of enemies though, I also realized about the fact that the Artificial Chaos is going to make its grander return after the events of not only with Sonic Adventure 2, but it's also with Shadow the Hedgehog as well. Because get it about the fact that the Artificial Chaos does manage to take place in a space colony arc.
Yeah, I was thinking about the same thing. Because obviously that was about the fact that despite while looking back on it though, the Artificial Chaos, specifically in Sonic Adventure 2, can be pretty annoying because of this unpredictable movement. Whilst compared to the forms of how it does it in Shadow the Hedgehog, at least thankfully with the gun gameplay aspect, that basically though makes things a lot more easy to manage.
So, relatively speaking though, Amy, is about the fact that I'm curious to know about the fact that what this Artificial Chaos enemy will be act out to be in Shadow Generations, but then again, we'll find out more about it once that particular game actually comes out. So, but anyway, and also I just realized about the fact that there's also about the fact that Shadow can able to actually do a double jump, whilst in modern Sonic, uses the air dash. So because of that though, I just want to classify that for the sake of the forms of the comparison's sake. And in regards of another thing that's worth noting for, is that as far as what Tiana has mentioned about this before, since in Journey Forms have been Princess Peach Showtime since yesterday, that yes indeed, about the fact that what makes the actual Shadow Generations is very unique in that particular side mode of any sorts, that basically though is about the fact that it looks like we're about to be getting some of these well, Doom powers to able to actually battle hordes of enemies and tackle platforming challenges like never before, surf on water, fly over obstacles, and stop time with the return of Chaos Control. So I think something tells me is about the fact that, well, also I just really love the fact that by the end of that particular trailer, that basically though Shadow now actually has wings, which I was like, oh my god, what the heck is happening to Shadow right now? So I suppose no matter what though, I suppose we'll find out more about it once we're able to actually hear about the forms of some more info on that during at some point in the future months to come. Well, mind you about the fact that we've only got about exactly 4 months left until the actual game decides to release. So time will tell, you know? And there's also another thing that's worth noting for is that, yes indeed, we're about to be, as I said before, we're about to able to actually expect able to come across into the open zone hub world, which as a result, again, it does remind me of a similar vibes as in Bowser's Fury from the likes of Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, because obviously that was about the fact that it feels like it's similar vibes. So basically what it did say about the forms of the description on the actual website about what the forms of that particular open zone hub world, where basically it did say this: explore the new white space, stretch your legs in an all-new hub world inspired by the open zone gameplay of Sonic Frontiers. As Shadow gains new powers, he can explore further and uncover the secrets hidden throughout. So yeah, very similar to Sonic Frontiers in that circumstances anyway. So because of that though, still we are basically excited about that, especially concerning for the fact that, well, obviously though, I just simply cannot wait for that particular game to come out. Oh, I cannot wait. But I'm sure enough though, maybe I'll give Shadow a chance to able to actually play the game on the go, on the Switch version, whilst meanwhile for Silver, I think I'm also able to let him play on the PlayStation 4 version, whilst meanwhile for me, I'm going to be playing the game on the Xbox One version, because obviously though I do have some super nostalgic when it comes to forms of trying to experiencing Sonic Generations on the Xbox 360 version, because obviously though, that was the first ever version we did somehow experience at first, because obviously though, like I said before, I really do enjoy Sonic Generations so much. In fact, why can't I go back into that game instead of this particular nonsense boring game after all? I mean, regardless of everything else though for this point, folks, we just want to able to actually go for this whole entire retrospective in regards to the forms of certain Sonic games I'm curious to check out. Even especially noticeable for certain redo Let's Plays from time to time, but regardless of everything else though, that's as far as we can able to try to explain about the forms of, well, some other aspects in mind. So, anyways though, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, I guess, in regards to the forms of Xbox Game Showcase, as far as I'm aware, that out of nowhere, it looks like they did somehow reveal not only a brand new trailer for this already existing game, which appears to be Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater Remake, but also, out of nowhere, we're expected to able to actually get ourselves a brand new reboot of Perfect Dark. And I was like, oh my god, is that Perfect Dark? Okay, I wasn't expecting that. Especially I do heard about the forms of Perfect Dark after the forms of that particular release of not only for this glorious classic Nintendo 64 game that almost inspires by GoldenEye when it comes to the forms of not only for the developers, but it's also with the forms of the publisher as well, made by Rareware. So as a result, no matter what though, yeah, that honestly caught me off guard. So either way though, I'm very curious to know of how that particular gameplay actually looks like. Well, mind you about the fact I'm pretty sure it's gonna be stuck onto the forms of Xbox Series X, by the way, so relatively speaking now, I think I'm also able to miss out on that, especially considering for the fact that we are still probably waiting for the sake of the forms of the Switch successor in the future, so that's besides the point. So, and again, like I said before, there's nothing else I can really talk about this. It's just about the fact that, well, honestly, that's as far as we can able to actually point things out when it comes to certain information we can probably discuss upon. Aside from the fact that, obviously, though, is about the fact that, yes, indeed, as far as what Tiana, she's already explained about this, is that when it comes to the forms of Shadow Generations, all things considered, that particular side mode of that particular game I was on about so many times already, that obviously those about the fact that Shadow Generations will not have a life system. So it's very similar to the forms of how it does it in Sonic Forces in that respect. And it's also the same thing that happens for the sake of the forms of Sonic Superstars, alongside with the forms of technically Sonic Colors Ultimate. Well, despite the fact that in Sonic Colors Ultimate, at the very least you do able to actually keep on collecting those Tails heads to able to actually act out as Tails mode, where, you know, every time if you do manage able to fall off the stage, and obviously though Tails will able to actually bring you back to the level without any sort of penalties like losing your score count and anything else to be more specific. And finally, most notably for Sonic Frontiers, for specifically, not only for the sake of the forms of the actual open zone segments, but it's also with the forms of well, the cyberspace levels, basically. So because of that, though, the only time exceptions to this, however, though, and that's what appears to be by the forms of the Ikauka gameplay style, which only happens, like, not only for one time, but it's also 3 times, and maybe even 4 times, likely for the sake of the forms of the end, final boss segment on the base game, which I will still stand by that about the fact I'm still not a big fan of that particular final boss on the base game, but I will say that with the forms of the Final Horizon final boss, that is actually 10 times better, not only for the sake of the forms of the music alone, but it's also about the fact that it's easily one of the most intense aspects in regards to the forms of the Final Horizon DLC update for Sonic Frontiers, especially concerning for the fact that, you know, we're able to actually see Super Sonic 2, which it's a little bit better of a difference, well, aside from the fact that with the actual different pupil color eyes. So it was expected to be red, but obviously though it's now in blue to able to represent cyber abilities. So that's as far as I can think about anyway. So either way, so there's our next Chaos Crystal right here, and rather than just trying to able to actually just to walk on foot all the way back to the very beginning of the level, so we somehow managed able to cut onto his black screen, apparently though, for this entire transition, and we somehow made our way back to Bygone Island without any sort of hesitations. So yeah, it's a little bit weird for that particular transition right there, but that's besides the point. So although, aside from the fact that you do somehow miss those specific collectibles, you know, Well, like I said, Amy, is about the fact that there is no way I'm not doing a full 100% completion of this entire playthrough, just like the forms of how it does it in some Sonic games in particular, ranging from, let's just say, Sonic and his Secret Rings, alongside with the forms of let's just say Sonic Unleashed for the likes of not only for the Wii version or the PS2 version, but also same applies with the forms of the PlayStation 3 version as well as the Xbox 360 version, aside from the DLC, which thankfully we did somehow show those off back in Journey Forms of been some time ago, in 2018 for sure. Which, conveniently enough, I remember back in the day that we did somehow manage to show off the entire DLC of Sonic Unleashed in just around that time when E3 was still around, back in 2018, which is pretty crazy if you ask me, especially concerning for the fact that, again, it's a shame about the fact that E3 is now no longer exist anymore, thanks to the forms of this particular aftermath of this whole pandemic thing, and also with the lack of interest. So, yeah, it really sucks, honestly, especially concerning for the fact that I miss the old days, you know, in regards to the forms of how the fact that what games have been announced, and all that stuff, which you probably get the idea about that.
Oh, I honestly forgot about that.
Yeah, that's as far as I can try to able to think about it. Oh, let's get back into the forms of that particular topic in regards to the forms of not exactly, fully 100% everything in regards to the forms of certain Sonic Let's Plays, in our channel anyway. Like, for instance, we couldn't be bothered able to go through a full 100% completion of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, because like I said before, that certain town missions are either boring and as well as glitchy fast, and on top of that, not that fun to play through, or experiencing for that matter. But at the very least, we did somehow show off the entire DLC stuff for Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, despite the fact there's nothing right to harm about. And on top of all that stuff, that was about the fact that, also I just realized about something, that I believe we've only got about almost 1 month left until, sadly though, the Xbox 360 marketplace store is about to be closing down. So because of that though, this means you won't be able to actually get not only the Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 DLC, because it seems about the fact that that particular game still hasn't been got the backwards compatibility, not with the forms of how it factor with Xbox One, but it's also with the forms of Xbox Series X/S. So, and this could be also applied to the forms of Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing as well. Like, basically though, it's a shame about the fact that that game does not get backwards compatibility. Well, aside from the fact that there is technically, like, I don't know, 1 or 2 versions of Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing technically does able to actually have backwards compatibility for any other Nintendo platforms. Like, there's the Wii version as well as the DS version. Like, you can still able to actually experience the Wii version of Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing if you guys manage to own the Wii U, because obviously though the Wii U does manage to play Wii games. But I will admit though right away that the picture quality, if you try to experience certain Wii games on the Wii U, might look a bit blurry, which as a result, that's the only thing I want to classify for something. Well, it still managed to become playable, but it's just about the fact that when it comes to quality, that it just feels a bit, I don't know, kind of blurry in some areas. So, but that's besides the point. And as far as the DS version is concerned, for Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, you can still able to actually play that on your Nintendo 3DS, because your 3DS will be backwards compatibility with the DS games. So, that's always that. So, but either way, so it looks like no matter what though is about the fact that it seems to be more specifically though, I have no idea what the heck is up with the phones this particular camera angle sometimes, but I get the feeling about the fact that there's gonna be nothing else to it aside from the phones of that particular chest that we did somehow opened up. So just to obtain some more scrap metal and what have you, but either way. Sometimes I will admit though as well is about the fact that there's also another reason why I despise the forms of Bygone Island, is because it's a bit confusing to navigate, because if you try to check on the map quickly, then you do realize about the fact that the entire layout of this whole entire map, it feels entirely flat, which as a result you have no idea what the heck you were supposed to go. Like for instance, I was making my way to the next destination, which appears to be the next level, which by the way, something's worth noting for, like I said said before, we're probably not going to continue uploading this more videos of Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric until specifically on the 24th of June, by the way. So I just want to make sure about the fact that, yes, indeed, I will remind you guys that we will decide able to take a break on more uploading schedules for the time being after this particular video has actually been up. So anyway, so it looks like we made our way to the next level, which as a result, what appears to be by the forms of...
Look, the farmlands.
Wait a minute. This doesn't look right.
What's that, Sonic?
Well, for those of you who don't know Amy, and all of you fans out there as well, apparently though, back in the day when the actual developer, Big Red Button Entertainment, did somehow manage able to tease the game of Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, that usually back then, that when it did say in development, that I will say that the actual graphics for that particular footage of farmlands, as far as I'm aware, it looks absolutely incredible as well as outstanding. Whilst in the final version, it really messed up with the phones, the graphics and presentation. Like, usually we can't able to actually tell that the sunflowers are not swaying around every time whenever you walk past them. They're all just like static and all that stuff. I mean, yeah, it's really jarring, especially concerning for the fact that I'll show the actual specific comparison in a second. I mean, relatively speaking, though, it's just about the fact that, well, honestly, it's just about the fact that I'm not bashing the actual engine, I'm more so for bashing the phones of this developers. Like, what the heck they thought that was a good idea? They're able to actually downscale with the phones of the graphics style like this. I mean, I'm sorry guys, it's just about the fact that this game is basically like a sequel to Sonic 06. Well, except the fact that in Sonic 06, the actual community feels a bit convoluted, especially concerning for the fact that, well, at the very least though, despite the fact that that game is also a bit of a mess, well, as I said before, at the very least though, it's about the fact that at least it did manage to able to have a much more steady frame rate. Well, in some scenarios anyway, but that's besides the point. So, and again, there's nothing else I could really talk about the forms of today's topic at this point, guys. I mean, it's just, look at this. It's just so unpleasant. Especially, yeah, I'll look on that particular comparison right here for this point, guys. Yeah, you see that right there when it says in development? Look how beautiful and also gorgeous it looks. At least I was really wish if that became reality. But nope, in the final version, well, they simply butchered that particular thing up. I mean, compared to the image right there, that's also really cool as well. I mean, it's definitely a missed opportunity, especially concerning for the fact that not only because it was rushed, but it's also I did found out it's because of the deadline before the actual holiday season. So, yeah, they really did budget the forms of the farmland section, so yeah, it's definitely a missed opportunity, like I said before. So, and also I just found out about the fact that the music in Bygone Island is not that very fitting either, so because of that though, yeah, it sounds a little bit more generic. So because of that though, yeah, I'm just very disappointed with the fonts of this section right here, especially concerning about the fact that it does have some bit of potential, but nope, it does feels a bit of a missed opportunity, like I said there's so many times already. So anyways, with that being said folks, it's about the fact that we got endings off this point right here. So join us next time for more of Let's Play of Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. Is that I think we're about to be moving on to the next level, and also we can able to obtain the next Chaos Crystal. So because of that though, and as I said before, we're also able to take our massive break for playing this game until we are able to actually go back into this game at some point on the 24th of June, and just before Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble will be releasing. And that's about it basically, so I'll see you guys until on the 24th of June. So, later fellas.
See you guys then!
This is my fault. They're here because of me. I need to draw them away.
We're in this together. We need to draw them away.
Hey, Egghead! And you too, Snake Breath! Come and get it! Oh no.